preface this video, I just want to say that I use this application Affinity Photo to perform the following operation. So I believe under View, Studio, Macros, it's kind of a weird place to put things, but I was able to get in here and create a macro to basically compress images down to be, 1024 by 512. And so what I did was I did something called a batch job that I'll just show real quick, and we'll just add these images in. And so what I ended up doing was searching for *HDR compared to previous, and then I would locate these HDRs that I had that were just too big. I mean, I don't want to load a 412 megabyte HDR into memory, so we'll just select that and put it in our list. And then I have a macro created that all it does is resize the image to 1024 by 512, reducing the file size quite a bit. And we'll put that in applied macros and just click, and you'll see that it'll go through these batch operations. And I actually did this with every HDR that you're about to see in order to create my LookDev viewport that contains all my favorite HDRs. Originally I was using SIBLs, however Chipp convinced me to try to keep the luminance values from the HDRs themselves while going for a smaller value amount. So now that we've talked about batching in Affinity Photo, let's jump over to Blender. If you were to just use Blender without setting up any additional studios, when you press Alt-V and then V again, you'll only have about 8 environments to jump through. So we'll press S and jump through them, and you can see that more than likely one of these would be able to do the job of helping us set up a quick viewport render. But just 8 choices isn't enough for me, especially after collecting so many HDRs over the years. So we'll go ahead and minimize this Blender, and we can see that I was able to convert every single one of those images into a lower counterpart. I pretty much set the limit to be 5 megabytes. So basically no image should exceed a certain file size in order to ensure that whenever we cycle through our viewports, everything runs fluidly. So in this scene, in my current iteration of Blender, I have all my studio light environments set up. So we will just select an object and press Alt-V, and now we're in the environment that we're looking through here. So we can move the mouse to rotate. We can press S and X in order to change the environment. And I just love scrolling through until I find something that really speaks out to me. Sometimes whenever I see certain hot highlights, I will press Q in order to turn on bloom. And that will just help it have just a little bit more oomph to it whenever we finally start getting some really hot hots going. But this is probably my favorite way to set up a render. Right now I have 2 render true set on, which means that whenever I click, it will set this up as my render, meaning that I can immediately go into render and expect the exact same result that I'm looking at, depth of field aside. If you want to have it jump to render automatically under the hops panel, under the opt-ins, you can actually opt in to have your viewport plus set the render, which will set the viewport to your render under the render settings, saving you a bit of work. So that basically is viewport adjust in a nutshell. You can just press Alt-VV in order to bring it up and cycle through your environments to find where you want. And then from there, either press R to set to render or to not set to render, depending on your preferences. Sometimes I like to have a different viewport than render just to kind of compare the two, but sometimes I just want to get my viewport looking exactly the way I want, get it presented just the way I want it to be shown, and then just click to apply and expect that same result over on the other side.